2009, calls for more funding to be made available to universities resulted in the commissioning of a report from the former chairman of BP, John Brown, to look into the future of higher education funding. The Brown Review was published on 12 October 2010 and it contained proposals to remove the cap on tuition fees. The resulting debate on the proposal sparked protests from students opposed to any rise in tuition fees. Despite these protests, the government won a vote in the House of Commons, which would result in universities eventually being able to charge students up to £9,000 a year for the annual tuition cost of students. With 80% of costs in higher education funding, most universities have been forced into this action. Mr. Willits, presenting the plans to the House of Commons, confirmed that universities charging higher levels of fees will have to show support for widening access to students from economically poorer backgrounds. Mr. Willits said graduates earning less than £21,000 per year would not pay any real interest on loans, but rates would rise to inflation plus 3% at £41,000 per year and above. The National Union of Students dubbed the plan, which will mean almost a threefold increase, an outrage. NUS President Aaron Porter said Liberal Democrat MPs who are going to ditch their election pledge to vote against any rise in fees should be ashamed of themselves. Is it sensible to increase the fees to £9,000 when they can't even be sure to get this money back? Universities need to charge students to offer them the best possible learning experience, but how can these fees be justified? How will these changes affect the reputation of the UK education worldwide? First, let's take a brief look at the history of UK's educational tuition fees. In the last 40 years, we have seen higher education in the UK to be transformed from an elite system to a mass participation system. Between year 1962 and 2002, the participation rate has grown from 6% to around 43%. The Labour government was committed to seeing this proportion increase to 50%. This increase in the number of students in higher education was not met by proportionate increases in funding for universities and colleges. In 2003, the government maintained that higher education was underfunded against its needs by around £9 billion. However, as it had long been argued that this was unfair for the general public to be made to pay for the additional cost of higher education, when the principal beneficiaries were the graduates themselves. Throughout the 1990s, the notion that the beneficiaries of higher education should pay for some of the cost began to gain widespread support across the political spectrum. Tuition fees were first paid by students in September 1998. They were flat-rate upfront annual charges to the value of £1,125 in 2004, for which all students whose parents earned over £32,000 per year were liable. Those with lower family incomes were liable for reductions or were exempt. The move was highly divisive within Labour, with many on the left of the party opposed to the notion of fees in principle, believing they discouraged people from low-income backgrounds from pursuing higher education. It is known that this move was also unpopular in Scotland, where four-year degree courses were the norm. No matter if the launch of the £9,000 tuition fees charge is the right decision or not, it certainly has caught everyone's attention. From the day it was announced, different reactions all over the world poured into our sites. Angry students immediately organized a protest across the UK, in their own ways telling the world about their concerns. Meanwhile, people from all backgrounds, teachers, parents, professionals, everyone's got their own opinion on the new policy. From news article comments, personal blogs, Twitter to YouTube, all over the media, each of them tells their understanding and thoughts on the shocking news. Apart from giving opinions, those who care about the UK's higher education and the future of students have also offered suggestions to help improve the system. The £9,000 fee policy also caught attention of non-EU nations. Reactions from economic experts, university professors, parents and students in China showed their own understandings from a different perspective. Our sources suggest that the government should have undertaken a review of cost per course, which could have provided a basis for differential fees depending on resources required to teach a specific degree. For this, a range of fees guidelines could have been introduced. Universities should provide academically valuable knowledge rather than offering courses leading to employment which does not necessarily require higher education. That is why a second proposal would be to reduce the number of unnecessary degrees. It is unfair that the entire repaying of fees should be on the student. If we are insisting on having tuition fees, then a much fairer way to fund it would be having 1/3 paid by the student, 1/3 paid by the government, and 1/3 paid by the end employers. Going to university should not feel like buying knowledge. It should be a place for research that generates knowledge. University life should offer students a valuable experience.